So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 92, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Maxie Lafleur, who's the CEO of Bus.com. So Bus.com is a managed marketplace and network of local bus operators for on-demand fleet transportation. They've raised over $21 million from top investors like Combinator, Jackson Square Ventures, Autotech Ventures, and more. So this is really a great chat with Maxie, where we got to learn more about Bus.com, did a deep dive into it as a leading transportation marketplace, got to learn more about how it's recently evolved, some unique marketplace insights, and also had a really great Q&A for those on the chat. So I really enjoyed this conversation and know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Maxie, welcome to the group chat. And it's definitely great to have you join us here today. So, Bus.com has come up a few times in the community when we talk about both B2B and transportation marketplaces. So I'm really excited to dive into things with you and learn more about it. Before we do, though, I think it might be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those who don't know you. And then, what led you to joining Bus.com as the CEO?
Absolutely. Well, I like to say that I'm a recovering accountant. I'm a CPA by trade, but quickly moved on to manage not the past, but the future. That's really what excited me. Spent a lot of my career doing mergers and acquisitions in corporates and business transformations. So I really am really passionate about everything about business. This is like my Lego blocks that I like playing with.
That's a good way to put it as far as Lego blocks to play with. So, so from that kind of, that background, I would say, I'm in the finance and accounting background. What led you to, joining Bus.com then as the CEO?
Well, really, when I heard about Bus.com, I was in a place where maybe large corp wasn't necessarily doing it for me anymore in terms of values, alignments, to whom I wanted to give my talent to. And Bus.com came up, and I was super excited at this B2B blue ocean opportunity. It's an opportunity that, when you think about buses, I really never thought about buses. You think about Greyhound, you think about intercity travel, which is about $1.7 billion opportunity in North America. And then I hear about this like $17 billion opportunity, 10 times as big, but you've never heard about it because there's been no brand to unify it. That really made me very excited.
Yeah, certainly. And, so I guess on that kind of note too, what you did kind of mention as far as like the market size a little bit, what's like the big opportunity that you guys are building for?
Well, there's just huge fragmentation on both sides of the marketplace. So your average bus operator has about 6 vehicles. Their average age is about 55 years old, not necessarily tech savvy or tech first sort of business. And on the demand side, it's a little bit of a commodity, but it's an afterthought, how you get your transportation. But it's a very important part of a lot of group events. And if that fails, I'll give you a quick example. If your bus didn't show up and you needed to go to your wedding, you're going to remember all of your life, right? This is those types of events that you'll remember if that bus was late of an hour and all your guests couldn't make it to your wedding. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Actually, I just went to a wedding this past weekend. We had a bus arrive on time. So if it was late, I would definitely remember that though, as you mentioned. Yeah. So I guess, before we really jump into it as a marketplace, so I think it'd be great if you can kind of give us like a high level overview and then maybe break down on Bus.com as a marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see ourselves really as a marketplace that tries to solve for, yes, introductions, but we've historically been able to digitalize the industry, first of all. Second of all, been able to be a self-checkout, predictive algorithms where you can actually now see a price. This was never done before, and creating liquidity in the marketplace. But as we move forward, we're really focused on the demand side to bring value to our operators. We feel that we're demand constrained, and we're trying to add more and more added value to operators through services and adding a little bit of a SaaS component to our marketplace.
Yeah, that's definitely a really interesting. Have you always been kind of demand constrained, or is that something that's recently kind of changed?
Well, compared to other more famous marketplaces, we didn't need to create our supply. We're using operators that already existed. but we're enabling them to have greater market share. And so getting access to them was a heavy lift in early stages. I know there's early stage listeners here, whereas a heavy lift, very hands-on to do. But once we've been able to build that, we've got a network of over 90% of all the operators. And so now it's really about unlocking the demand.
Yeah, so I guess it might be helpful too, like who is Bus.com for as far as like on the operator side? I would say maybe like the typical operators, and then maybe even some that we might not think of as far as like non-obvious.
In terms of operators, I'd say you probably wouldn't know their names because they're a recent immigrant. They're a former just driver that decided to launch their own business. These are usually small to medium enterprise, and that actually constitutes almost 95% of the industry. Why we choose our different operators is because they're collaborative. They're open-minded about trying new technology. They're open-minded about changing their practices to improve the quality of service that's delivered to our clients. And so we're really looking for forward-looking individuals that are looking to build a more resilient business, really.
Yeah, and then as far as like the types of kind of buses that they're operating, does that kind of vary? Like, do you have like different categories as far as like 8 to 10, say for instance, to kind of like the larger capacity? Or
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variety, and I think you're sort of going to a persona, but I have to say they're a little bit different, and we ensure that in each region we have the full breadth of all types of vehicles, from a Sprinter van, we go as done at even vans, so about that 7 or 8 people plus vehicles, and we make sure that we've got a great complementary of fleets to make sure that we can cater to any type of group travel need.
Yeah, and I know that. I guess on that note too, how many markets do you operate in today?
The reality is we operate really nationwide in Canada and US. But we've got a lot more density in the main cities like Los Angeles, New York, Toronto, for example. And this is really also based on, there's a really great correlation on population size and bus demand. So we just got really great density in those major markets.
So how are you thinking about kind of like managing liquidity? And you did also mention that it sounds like you're building some SaaS tooling for the supply side. So maybe how that kind of like plays a factor into it.
Well, when we first started, it was really about matching, right? A more typical managed, marketplace. And as we really saw that the right way to do this, because of the brand, because of being able to build a sort of recognition, we need to be a managed marketplace. We've been slowly transitioning towards more concentration in terms of number of operators. So we actually operate with less operators than before by then integrating with them, having our technology on their buses, realizing our trips. And so really we've been concentrating our efforts in terms of operators, and we've seen better results in terms of in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of even the operator satisfaction, because we have a bigger share of their wallet, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So could we go a little bit deeper on that? I would just be really interested to learn more about, how you are kind of more managed and focus on those operators.
Well, we're working more towards revenue share agreements and really true partnership agreements where we don't have to negotiate every trip, for example. And that's a cost savings really on both sides, and it really aligns incentives, right? And we really see our operators as great partners, collaborators. We concentrate on what we're great at, which is, marketing, sales, and technology. Sometimes in services that have really great scalability that we can offer to them, like fintech products, and they concentrate on what they're amazing at, which is to operate. And that's usually what attracted them to running this business. It's usually not to secure some lending, for example.
Yes, yeah, certainly. And, on the note of as far as like kind of fintech and, embedded services, what would those kind of be? And like, how did you think about offering those?
Well, we're still not offering them, and it's really on the roadmap, but I'd say that there was a lot of close relationships and understand, when we went through COVID, being group travel, that hit us massively. You can't underestimate the impact to our business. But it was a great opportunity where we set up the Bus Angels program. We actually used some employees that didn't have much to do in the beginning of COVID to actually partner with our bus partners and help them renegotiate their financial structures and help them survive COVID. And through this process, really understood what were the closer needs and for financial products that don't really quite exist right now or not really well catered to the reality of our partners.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you actually brought that up. I was going to ask, about how kind of COVID impacted the business. Now, and maybe even kind of reshaped it.
It certainly reshaped it. It went from hero to zero, and we had to make some really hard decisions really quickly as a management team. It's easier to say with hindsight that obviously it was a big opportunity, and how could we capture that opportunity? And I'd have to say the business that we were running pre-COVID now constitutes maybe 10% of what we're doing. We surpassed what we were doing in 2019, and these are all sort of new use cases that we're going after that have solidified our position in the market. We've taken this opportunity to improve our unit economics. We're a lot more efficient than we used to be. And at the same time, we've spent a lot of time doing discovery and de-risking of the future roadmaps of products, the products and services that we could offer to operators, et cetera. We've also added services in terms of larger governmental contracts that we have never gone towards before, been successful at that, which has really transformed a little bit the backlog, having more predictability, similar to an MRR type of business going forward. So that's obviously the investor very happy about that.
Yeah, I can certainly imagine. So on that note too, that's a very interesting, topic that we actually don't really discuss that much here in the community. But so how did you identify that as an opportunity as far as kind of working with the governments, and then maybe even what was the initial approach with that like?
So so COVID hits, we do all the changes we need to do, and then we sit down and now what, right? What can we do with it? And so we separated the team into the tech team continued to execute on the roadmap, but everybody else got put into 4 small autonomous teams. And everybody got to throw ideas, and we covered what a good pivot was, from a very simple pivot to a very hard pivot and ideas. And everybody got a chance to put all their ideas, and then we ranked them based on a bunch of criteria that we had established. And eventually the top 4 got tried out for autonomous. So it was 4 startups within a startup. And the idea for the transit piece and the governmental piece was, well, we've got access to this wonderful network, and it's available. What could really drive value, number one, to operators would be to increase utilization. So when are they available that they're not being used right now? Well, in winter and during the day and, the weekdays, that's a perfect complementary market for transit. And we went after this and we were successful. And that's a little bit where the idea came from.
That's a really cool story, and thanks for sharing with us on that. So, I'm kind of curious, what were some of those ideas maybe that didn't make it?
Well, this may be contrary to a lot of people were very passionate about electrification of fleets, and so we really looked at, could we build some proprietary predictive technology to help operators electrify their fleet. And I have to say the timing was wrong. Timing was wrong because we're in a position to necessarily transition. We discovered that more than 50% of all of our trips could be electrified, but the industry wasn't quite there. And the appetite in terms of government subsidies to pay for this as well wasn't quite there. So that went on the pile of good ideas, bad timing. Maybe we'll revisit.
Yeah, so sometime in the future, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm really interested to learn more. So you have a very unique kind of background. It sounds like, with a kind of accounting, and from the business and finance side. So when you were thinking through these potential kind of pivots for your marketplace, what were some of the kind of considerations that were involved with that and kind of making some of these bigger moves, with the, financials kind of in mind too, maybe?
I don't know know that I approach it any differently, but I have to say that obviously, if you take a t-shirt size approach to things, I don't know if that's for people who are listening, if that makes any sense, but essentially the level of effort would be small, medium, large, for example, and the level of result would be small, medium, large. We use that very often. We definitely concentrated ourselves in COVID on more, very high returns, sort of large potential return, small investment. And, I'd say that was certainly where we focused the most, and the sort of large investment or medium investment, but, maybe got delayed. So I think that's a little bit how we focused on things, and just because we needed to show results really as well. I don't know if that makes any sense. And in terms of financials, I manage two things, my net revenues and my burn. And I have a good two handle on that. And I know my burn, a lot of it is driven through people. So every hire I get involved with is something very personal, decision, because it's, you never want to fire anybody because you took it on too many people. So those are a little bit how I manage the financials.
Got it. Yeah. So on that note, as far as the team, what is your team like today? And maybe kind of like the org structure as far as like how you operate as a marketplace?
Yeah. We transformed a little bit how we did business. So previously we had really like sales and procurement, and it was separated. And we took that great opportunity to combine both roles and work on our incentives. So we really do business differently, where each individual, if ever they do touch an individual, because, if you buy $40,000 worth of bus services, you're going to want to talk to somebody, and really incentivize them on alignments with the company. So what are the company objectives? And everybody's now well aligned. That was really great. But in terms of team, we're much smaller, I'd say, but we achieve more. And so we focus on hiring people who make things happen, that play to win, right? People who usually have done it before. I tend not to invest too much money on people who have not done it, who are not tested. Time is probably your most prized resource. People have a growth mindset, that are very transparent. They're not afraid of talking about their failures, and that understand that we'll win as a team. So, yeah.
Are you guys, do you operate primarily remote right now, or is it more like a localized, you kind of take like a boots on the ground approach as far as markets too?
We've taken this opportunity to grow the team externally to Montreal. This is where we're based originally. I think we'll never be back. Everything has been exploded, and I'll say that likewise. I still have a lease. If I could get rid of it, I would. The objective is, we'd love to invest more in getting together often, but making it matter, offsites, remote together, having parties, and really giving more, investing more in mindful togetherness.
Yeah, certainly. On that note too, what is like a day-to-day like as the CEO of bus.com for you?
I have very diverse days, but maybe, we'll do a review of a strategic initiative, or sort of OKRs. Maybe I'll do an interview. Maybe I'll review a large contract that we're about to sign that I really want to sign off on. If it's a Friday, maybe I'll have a coffee and a whiteboard exercise, a big thinking of things I might have missed. Maybe a one-on-one or a touch point with a client, a partner. And catching up over emails across all of this, I guess.
So, sounds like a day in the life of a startup CEO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as your fundraising journey, could you maybe share a little bit more about that and like what that's been like?
Yeah. In my view, I've been with the company for about 2.5 years, and so I haven't been there since the very early beginnings. But the company has been through multiple successful initial programs, including Y Combinator, and was early to impress in terms of their strategy and inspiration. And that's helped us successfully land some really great industry specific investors. in our Series A, and some clean tech, some strategics, like BMW. I'd say, it's been really successful. The future, however, it's really changed. So group travel may have been a little bit more popular, I guess, at a certain point. And now different people, the investors' thesis have changed. And so it's a different landscape. And I mentioned this because it might be interesting to some people, but we have to refresh a little bit who might be potential next steps into the growth investors. And I think position is for also other types of capital as well, different sources than maybe your typical VC, and we've kept our options open in that regards for sure.
Yeah, that's a really great point as far as thinking how that's potentially changed as far as who the ideal investors might be. So how are you kind of like thinking about that?
Well, at a certain stage in a certain size, you start thinking about private equity, and one thing that's been really important to me is, often it's talked about is who you let on your board. I think we have had a good board, and that's really helped us through COVID. But these are the times that really test the board and see how great they can be, right? And so when we're thinking about this, is also about the added value and really thinking through a little bit that exit, even in the introductions, and asking more questions about their LPs and making more background checks. So I don't know if that really helps in terms of my thinking, but I'd say certainly, it's even opening doors right now, you prepare exits, right? So strategic conversations already, and making sure there's, we make any future fundraising efforts as competitive as possible.
Yeah, certainly. So we're going to jump into questions here in a little bit. But before we do, so you have some really great experience, as the CEO and quite the journey, with Bus.com. So do you have any tips that might be helpful for us as early stage marketplace founders?
Yeah, maybe one very direct. I'll just repeat that's been said, but to really understand and give guidance on where you want to land in terms of unit economics, and really, it's never too early to sort of start understanding those, even though you're a little bit in product market fit. But I'd say one key learning that continues to be true. I know that in early stage, there's a lot of story over a lot of things, right? Yet I feel like growth execution trumps strategy every time, in the sense that if you've got amazing growth metrics, it smooths all over, over a lot of other problems, and it gives you sort of the funds to be able to fix all other problems. So I don't know, focus on your growth execution, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's certainly a great tip. So I did want to ask you, jump in here and ask really quickly before we get into the questions. So you mentioned kind of OKRs earlier, right? So what are some of those that you focus on as far as a team?
We really have two currently, which unpack themselves into another further 7 or 8. But for us, it's the growth of gross profit. So for us, it's net revenues. It's really, really important as an objective. And the second one is about really improving the customer experience. And we're talking about the demand customer here experience. The idea there is that we're already, our NPS is already at 78. It's very high. We're very happy about that, but feels like we could do so much more. And in our industry, it's really important. There's search that's really important, and then the next big channel is really about referrals. And so for us, creating some big word of mouth is important, and for that experience needs to be better than just a recommendation. It needs to be perfect. And so those are really the two metrics, and we feel like one plays off the other, and all of our goals really are driven by those two goals.
Yeah, that's probably going to lead to some questions here as far as referrals and whatnot. But you did mention as far as on the demand side, and the NPS, which is that's really great. So what is the what's the status quo like if someone's looking to book a bus? Kind of what are you competing with when it comes to that?
Often, so for our ideal customers, often their prior operator, either they want to do a price check, or they don't have the availability because they don't have enough buses. Or they've never been able to really purchase from a central point in so many states. So they're discovering, sometimes we're competing with ourselves in the sense that there's really no alternative. They'd have to do all of the logistics themselves. They wouldn't have technology to do it. It'd be complicated. And so the building awareness of how they can purchase differently. And yeah, I'd say there's local operators, but then I really don't want to compete with them. That's really not where we are. There's traditional brokers that exist. They tend to be very transactional. I hope that after listening to me today, you understand that we're really trying to get out of that in as a type of relationship we're having with our operators, really more, aligned, working together in the same direction.
Cool. Hey, Zach, did you want to jump on?
Yeah. Hey, Maxie, thanks for your time, and it's awesome to hear your experience and your background. So I appreciate it very much. And I can relate. I'm in the logistics kind of trucking industry as well in a way. And so basically we pair people who have pickup trucks, standard size pickup trucks with people in areas that have to deal with trash themselves. So meaning the customer signs up for a weekly trash pickup, and then we find verified haulers in their area and vet them, and they pick up the trash. And so one thing that you mentioned was that your constraint is the demand side, which is interesting to me, but because our constraint is the supply side. Mm-hmm. The supply side for us is also these local regional haulers that have their own trash trucks, right? That own their own trash companies. Yeah. And so we're in the process of building out what we call Vixter Pro. So the company is Vixter, and Vixter Pro is a SaaS software tool that these operators it kind of solves the cold start problem. When I grow into an area, they can use this tool to run their business, their trash business. And once we have that flagship operator, mm-hmm. then we can start deploying all of our marketing and acquiring the demand side. That's what I feel best about, right, is the demand side. And so one thing that we've run into is that building out that software, it's really making it super usable for these regional haulers and really for the trash companies, because we experience a very similar thing to what you mentioned, is kind of the sophistication of these of the supply side. Not to say they're unsophisticated, but it's just that, generally speaking, the folks that we're dealing with have very minimal tech, and it's all in notebooks, and they're collecting cash and checks, and you know what I mean? So I just would love to hear your approach as it relates to building out a SaaS product for your supply side, and your approach with basically how, is it a freemium model for them, and how I understand you mentioned you're monetizing on the fintech potential channel, but can you speak to that SaaS build out and how you're acquiring your operators? Because that's kind of a very similar thing that we're working through right now.
So I want to answer another question you haven't asked as well, but it's so interesting for me because you said you're supply constrained, maybe. For us, what we've found is that to grow in a new city, it's much easier to have what we call spots, sort of one-off deals, simple deals, to be able to test out our suppliers and then decide who gives a better service, right? And understand who we want to do business with. So we actually test them out before we sort of get married. We go on a couple of dates, right? And so we actually do the reverse. We build the demand, and then we go towards deepening the relationship, towards then investing in SaaS and putting our technology on their buses, etc. Because it's costly, obviously, for both parties, right? You don't get married with the first person in our case, and so we're really going from dates to maybe getting engaged to marriage. And to answer your question in terms of approach to SaaS, we have great benefit of knowing their availability on the fleet that we use and on the fleet we don't use, or on all their vehicles. And so for us, there's an advantage of giving a portion of that SaaS away as an initial platform for us to get data. We really see ourselves as a data and network company. And from there, it's a great platform to upsell on all these other services and fintech products, and they sell themselves because they save money to our operators, right? And so they we don't do it all at once. We do it in phases. But the initial technology, we really feel we have both something to gain to sort of have that visibility, including the fact of we don't have to talk to each other in terms of being able to book it, which is a big savings in terms of operationally, right? It's completely aligned again when we're saying both companies are super aligned together. I don't know if that really answered your question, but hopefully it did.
It certainly helps, and maybe we can connect offline and talk trucking separately. But
I'll let you do so. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. That's a great question. I'm glad you had a chance to come on, Zach. Hey, Benjamin, do you want to jump on?
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time. Actually, super grateful. I'm building actually a B2C marketplace as well. So like a SaaS enabled marketplace for the event rental industry. So people that are hiring out like tables, chairs, party speakers, and that sort of thing. So my question was, what were the key, go-to-market strategies in the early days that helped you, reach product market fit?
I missed just what in the early days? I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
Yeah, what were the key go-to-market strategies in your early days that helped you reach product market fit?
So here's the thing. This market existed before us, right? We're not, in this case, I felt like the product market fit test was about would people come back, right? And it was more about engaging into a conversation about keeping that NPS very high and understanding what, there's a lot of talk about doing things that don't scale to then do something that does scale. I think that's very true in our case. And we were very, very close in doing things that didn't make at all sense at the beginning to try and figure out what we need to do and what made a difference. And we tested things out that we kept, and a lot of things that we killed that just didn't move the needle. So I think that could be true. And I'd say, event rentals, it's super interesting. We started off with a lot of festivals. And it remains a big sector of ours. And so if ever you want introductions to, then if they're a good potential client of yours, I'd be super happy to help. It's a good portion of our business, and for them, it was a little bit different than we wanted. Eventually we had to have the hard conversation about not making a unique value prop for each one and making it different and sort of productizing what we're doing rather than doing order taking of, yes, we're going to do whatever you want. That was a little bit of a push and pull over the years, really.
That's awesome. No, thank you so much. Super grateful.
Awesome. Hey, was it Lenny? Do you want to jump on?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Maxie, thanks a lot for your feedback. Super useful. I have several questions. It's more from your CEO perspective. It's regarding the recruitment. I would like to know, because I'm really struggling to recruit folks. It's like something that I find super hard for me. So I would like to understand, how do you navigate when you want to recruit someone? What kind of criteria do you make your decision on? And what kind of mistake maybe you've made that you can share with us so we can avoid to do the same? Because I feel for me, it's like a circle of making mistakes. So if you have any tips, that'll be super useful. Thanks a lot.
I'd be curious, if we had more time, I'd love to hear what you think is a mistake, because sometimes, you hire somebody and they're great for a period and they're no longer great. And so what I've seen in especially fast scaling companies like Best.com is that somebody who's great in initial phase are generalists, right? And the qualities that you're recruiting for are completely different than what I'm recruiting for right now, which are more people who have done it before, but are requiring a different type of pay, right? It's not the same type of people, and they have a lot more gray hair, and they need to make sure that they're working for somebody who's going to take care of, they can see you through your bullshit. Pardon my French here. So I think, what is a mistake would be interesting if you want to share if there's one in particular, but I'll try to answer your questions in terms of criteria. I really look for somebody that inspires me, that I would like to work for. because often I'm recruiting executives or somebody that are going to recruit themselves, and I really want great alignment. I very much validate in terms of the values that we are trying to hire for. And in case I've got two candidates, I will always go for the smarter candidate versus experience. I know I've just said I hire for experience, but I always go for the smarter candidate because I feel the smarter candidate will figure it out, will find resources, will find a way through it. So that's a big criteria for me. Maybe mistakes. Like, it's always tempting to try and go to get somebody who's done it maybe at a company that's a little bit bigger than your, like much bigger than yourself maybe. And you think, oh, for sure, I'll just give the keys and they'll be able to do it. But often they become what I call T-Rex, small hands. They don't touch much, you know, it's not very hands-on. And it's a big, difficult jump to sort of be able to add value in a startup, because guess what? Everybody needs to be doing work. It can't be like one visionary leader, you know, part of it. So that's maybe a mistake that I've been tempted to do and or have done, and that I really try and refrain from. No matter how beautiful their CV is and how they present themselves, they're usually very polished, but that doesn't mean they're good.
Okay, thanks a lot. Like in my case, it's usually I tend to hire people that have a good fit in. Like it's kind of the, like you mentioned, the smart side of someone. If I feel like this guy understands and can connect real quick, I'm like, okay, this guy can solve the problem. But what happens in my case is they don't deliver. They can be smart, but turns out they don't deliver. So I think there's something wrong in what I expect from them. Maybe that is way beyond just the feeling and the understanding that we have with each other.
Well, two thoughts there that come to mind, and I could have a longer conversation with that, but was it clear what you were trying to achieve, and did you let them achieve how they wanted to achieve it? Often I find sometimes I am the one who does the failure. I'm the one who does the mistake by not being clear enough, not spending enough time up front, delegating. And when I say delegating, I mean like really having a great understanding. Let's have a vision meeting, 2 hours if we need, of really what success would look like on this. So it's crystal clear when the person goes off. That's something that's happened to me that I really try to get right. And the other one is just then, if you're trying to filter out people who will not deliver, make them do a business case. I have a lot of executives come and present to the whole team before, and they have to do work before they get hired. And often it weeds out people who don't like doing work.
Okay, thanks a lot. And
I don't know if that
Mike, do I
helps.
have time? Yeah, definitely. Okay, so my second question is, when you have hired those folks, so how do you maintain a strong culture within your company, knowing that everyone's working remotely? And what kind of framework have you put in place to make sure that, I'm not saying like you control everyone's, like everyone is free to do, I suppose if you hire them, it's because they're going to do the job, but you still need like a kind of framework to make sure that everyone is, that everyone's on track and you can still follow what's happening if you need to.
I think those are two separate questions. So the culture piece of being decentralized and the how do you make sure that things are delivered on time, but how to make sure things are delivered on time. I really believe in KPIs and this cascading down of sort of top goals and making sure, coming back to, does this fit in increasing net revenues or the experience? No, it doesn't fit. And making sure that people report back through the direct reports. That's a little bit of weekly and monthly management meetings. In terms of culture, I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it's an evolving thing, but I'd say hiring for the right values, I think, is a big piece of it. And I rely a lot on my executives for cascading that down, information, the spirits. Sometimes we do exercises at the top level, and I really want them to do it in their own teams. And then, as I mentioned earlier today, I really want to put more money towards getting together, not, often enough that we see each other. And that's where we build relationships. And you kind of see what it looks like, right? And I don't know, being raised in a more traditional sort of a corridor talking, this is where you learn the culture, exactly if I'm doing 100% what I should be doing. I'm still looking for the perfect answers here, but I really try.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to keep in touch so that you can update me about the progress you made, and so I can learn from you.
Okay, and by the way, I mean, everybody's talking about it, from large or small. It's a complicated thing, and I think we need to keep discussing it as a team as well, right? Like, let it be top of mind, so we just don't let it go of that concern. I think that's probably half the battle.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. That's great. Hey, Maxie, so I actually had a question for you myself, and that's on like the spectrum of frequency for your marketplace. Where does it fall from, like I would say, like from the low to the high end of frequency, and then maybe are there any kind of specific challenges that come with that?
Yeah, big time. I love that question. So we've got 3 markets. We've got sort of spot, which is your one-time booking, doesn't really repeat. You've got enterprise, which tends to repeat, but they don't all buy the same time. Some people buy for 5 years, some people buy for one event at a time, some people buy for, so there's different sort of frequencies in that regard. And then you've got transit as a service, which is sort of RFPs, long sales cycle, but every 5 years, right? And it does come with challenges because, from the first point is the lack of repetitiveness. It's very difficult to sort of create a base of revenue that that next year you've got at least something that's going to happen, right? You have to resell it all from scratch. That's a difficult part of marketplaces. So spot is really difficult in that way, not necessarily your focus. Enterprise is all about helping clients understand that they actually win by buying in bulk and not coming piecemeal by piecemeal, understand they can buy differently and coaching them in the right direction. But it is a challenge, and it's even a challenge in the qualification process, understanding really what is the number of bus days a client might have per year. People don't think about that, but that's really what, when we're trying to size clients, it's a little bit difficult, even on the first call, that qualification process. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that certainly does. So we had to warm up to get to the good marketplace questions, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. So you did mention. So you mentioned the qualifying, right? So what is that process like when I guess you're mentioning qualifying an operator, or?
No, when we're qualifying, so somebody or a company will fill in the form, book a bus or fill in the form. There's 2 ways of doing this, and depending on or different criteria, if they're enterprise, they usually get to a person, and then there's a conversation that happens, and we need to quickly know, is it a $2.5 million client or it's a $5,000 client, and give them a different path, and they definitely buy in a different way. So we're always refining that process to make it as smooth as possible and put the riskiest questions closer and closer up front, so we don't waste our time. Same thing in terms of sales. So to increase our sales velocity, really understanding where the people sort of jump off the most and trying to address that, and we iterate on this.
Hey, Ankit, it looks like you raised your hand here. Do you want to jump on? Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just keep asking Maxie questions myself.
I'll just ask a quick one. Maxie, thank you for doing this. Love the TRX analogy as well. And I had a question regarding the bus partner program. You were talking about the pandemic and the effect in the context of the board earlier on. And what we do, just to give some context, is that we help marketplaces and platforms set up their capital programs. It's kind of like Square Capital as a service. So we are working with different, fleet managers right now in trucking space and so on, like Convoy and a few of the other RV rental marketplaces. And in that context, I was curious to sort of learn that with the bus partners, have you seen them struggle with capital, working capitals, or renovation or maintenance in some of those aspects? And how has that journey been for the bus partners? How was that during the COVID times? And now, is it getting better for them? Just interested to learn a bit more about that.
So you can imagine that if you've got 5 buses, you're probably not getting a great rate. And so I'd say their needs are often primarily just getting, if you're a recent immigrant, for example, you don't have a great credit check and you're probably going to have to sign up personally on these loans. And so these rates, would make anybody cry. So their main difficulty is understanding, if they do business with us, their loan is a lot less risky. If they essentially market their fleet through us, it's a lot less risky, and therefore they should pay a lower interest rate. In terms of working capital, I'd say for sure it's, especially traditional charter operators that just have a pure play, a charter fleet, will have more difficulty in the winter time and be really catch rich in the summer. So there's definitely a need for sort of planning for the winter time. And there could be a plan there. And the other thing is that insurance costs. I don't know, some of you are touching the trucking industry, but especially in the United States, the insurance cost for operators has more than doubled in COVID because of the risk sort of profile. Just everybody's really more risky. So that's really punitive. And we really want to do more insurance based on telemetrics and being able to reduce their overall charge, really to align it to when they're using their fleet.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's super helpful. Yeah, Maxie. Yeah. I would love to jam more, but I won't sort of keep the topic so niche. So I'll reach out to you later.
Absolutely. Feel free to.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like insurance could be a whole conversation in itself, and financing.
Yeah,
So.
well, we're not like Outdoorsy where they couldn't do their marketplace without the insurance, but there's still a lot of economies of scale in an industry where 95% of people don't have scale. So certainly we could be that player that helps them all.
Yeah, I was going to say, Zach, last question, so we'll squeeze it in.
Yes, last question real quick. Sorry about that. Yeah, so one thing you mentioned earlier was the importance of referrals in the customer experience and how those have to be spot on. We're building out our tech right now. And so the idea is we're trying to, put the virality component and bolt it on top of everything we're offering so that basically when a customer or a hauler joins the team, it's a very easy, seamless flow for them to share it. So my question for you is, how did you mobilize that virality component, and how are you tracking it? I know that the two main things really for us, when I've kind of read through it, is language of the actual, what the customer sees, and then the actual incentive structures and making it super easy for them. And so, how are you tracking those and testing them, and how really specifically also, how are you building the team around that? Because I understand that the team, market hackers, everyone that's kind of involved with product marketing and, the engineering piece of it. I don't know if you have a team that's kind of all working together towards that or not.
Everybody knows that it's a priority. So, but this is really actually for us, it's an operations focus, because the referral often happens when you're super happy, right? You're just happen, you're giving us 5 stars or whatever you're doing, and then that's the right point to ping them for a referral. And the incentives, there's off the shelf tools that we've tried for our MVPs that were not a heavy lift at all to do, and then we wanted to put time into integrating it into our platform, etc. But they could be done sort of a little bit manual with the help of these tools to track it. Our finance team likes us less, but we've sort of used what do you call it? Sort of these little cards, gift cards to begin with instead of credits, because it's simpler to manage, although credits would have been easier. And I'd say, you're mentioning it, I'm using it on the customer side, but it was definitely something we used to develop the supply side. So an operator that loves you they know the other operators, and they will do a fantastic job. So when you were thinking about supply constrained earlier in the talk, I definitely think that's something you should explore us on that side. This worked really well for us for free because they just want to help their fellow other trucker or, other bus operator.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great question. Well, this is really a great chat. So, thanks for joining us, Maxie. It was great to learn more about, your awesome experience building bus.com. Last question that I had for you though, before you kind of wrap things up, so if you were to go back, to right before you joined as the CEO, what would you tell yourself about marketplaces?
I don't know, actually. I wish I hadn't thought that question before, but certainly, I came into this thinking there was something more magical about the introduction of those two markets really together. Is the introduction is very important, and I come away at it right now thinking, no, it's not just that. It's really the SaaS that we're going to add to it. It's the structure. It's not necessarily just an introduction and transactional. I really think that it's a lot more complex than what I initially maybe envisaged.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of head nods here, so I think we can all relate with that. So, well, cool. Well, yeah. Well, thanks again for taking the time to join us, and just time for kind of a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best place. I tend to give a lot of updates there, and we're working on a couple of things that will be coming out, but I'll be announced on LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. And
Awesome.
It was really great being able to discuss things with you.
Thanks, Maxie.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for joining, and thanks everyone for the great questions today.